Let's talk about the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, an organization shrouded in mystery, intrigue, and more than a little controversy. Born in 1947 from the ashes of Untold's OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, its initial job was straightforward: to gather intelligence for the president, to provide crucial insights into a rapidly changing world. But that's only half the story, the public face, if you will. The real twist? A vague clause, almost an afterthought in the National Security Act, gave the CIA power to do other functions affecting national security, language that would prove to be incredibly consequential. A blank check, essentially, for covert action, a license to operate in the shadows. This meant the CIA wasn't just America's eyes and ears, it was also something far more potent. It was its invisible hand, free to meddle in foreign governments with almost no oversight, no public debate, and often, no accountability. For decades, the agency operated in near total secrecy, its budget hidden deep within the Pentagons, its actions largely unaccountable to the public or even Congress. The logic, at least as it was presented, was Cold War realpolitik: fight the Soviets in the shadows, using any means necessary, regardless of moral considerations. President Truman, who signed the act creating the CIA, later admitted, with some regret, that he never intended to unleash a secret army of spies and saboteurs operating beyond the reach of democratic oversight. The CIA's unique structure, part intelligence gathering and analysis, part paramilitary operations, part secret political force, set the stage for everything that followed, for better or worse. It wasn't just about knowing things, about understanding the world. It was about changing things, shaping events, often outside the established rules of diplomacy or the laws of war. The US government could plausibly deny involvement while the CIA bribed politicians, rigged elections, and armed rebels. In short, the CIA became the ultimate tool of American exceptionalism, where international rules were optional and covert action, however morally questionable, was simply business as usual. If the CIA had a travel log, it wouldn't be filled with vacation snapshots and souvenir receipts. Instead, its favorite stops were countries, often resource-rich or strategically located, that dared to elect leaders the US didn't like, leaders who threatened American economic or geopolitical interests. Iran, 1953, Prime Minister Mossadegh nationalized oil, challenging the Anglo-Iranian oil company's control. The CIA's Operation Ajax, a meticulously planned covert action, overthrew him, installing the Shah and securing Western oil interests, ensuring decades of Iranian subservience to US foreign policy. Guatemala, 1954, President Arbenz's land reforms threatened United Fruit Company, an American corporation with vast holdings in the country. The CIA's Operation PBS success armed rebels, provided them with training and resources, and staged bombings and toppled the government, installing a military dictatorship and sparking decades of brutal civil war that claimed countless lives. Congo, 1960, Patrice Lumumba, the Congo's first democratically elected prime minister, wanted to control Congo's vast mineral resources for the benefit of its people. The CIA plotted his removal, viewing him as a communist threat. He was eventually captured and killed, and Mobutu's brutal and corrupt dictatorship followed, enriching himself while ruthlessly suppressing dissent and pleasing US interests. Chile, 1973, Salvador Allende, a democratically elected Marxist, was seen as a threat to US hegemony in the region. The CIA funded strikes to destabilize the country, spread disinformation through the media, and backed Pinochet's bloody coup, leading to years of brutal dictatorship, torture, and the disappearance of thousands. These weren't isolated incidents. They were a pattern of intervention and regime change orchestrated by the CIA. The CIA acted as a global enforcer, protecting American interests above all else, punishing any nation that strayed from US-approved policies, often under the guise of fighting communism. The result? Brutal dictatorships propped up by the US, devastating civil wars fueled by foreign intervention, and a legacy of justified mistrust toward the United States, a sentiment that continues to resonate in many parts of the world. The agency's covert interventions fundamentally shaped the political destinies of entire regions, leaving lasting scars. Democracy was often sacrificed for stability, a term frequently used to justify actions that served US interests, as defined by American interests, often prioritizing corporate profits and geopolitical dominance. The cost was paid in lives lost to violence, freedom denied to political prisoners, and the credibility of the U.S. abroad, eroding its standing as a champion of democracy and human rights. The CIA's fingerprints are found wherever democracy was crushed in the name of anti-communism, a convenient justification for interventions that often served other agendas. The world is still living with the consequences of these actions, grappling with the legacy of instability and resentment. And the pattern didn't stop with the Cold War. The CIA has continued to engage in covert operations around the world, albeit often with different justifications. The CIA's war on socialism often doubled as a war for American corporate interests. In Guatemala, the United Fruit Company's ties to Washington ensured CIA intervention to protect profits, not just ideology. The Dulles brothers, one running the CIA, the other as Secretary of State, turned covert action into a family business. Across the globe, the agency crushed labor movements, privatized industries, and kept economies dependent on the U.S. The CIA funded pro-business parties, destabilized unfriendly economies, and labeled reformers as communist threats. This wasn't just about fighting communism. It was about securing resources and markets for American companies. The result? A global economic system shaped by covert operations, not just market forces. The CIA became the armed wing of globalization, ensuring capital always flowed toward the United States. Enter Project MKUltra, a clandestine operation shrouded in secrecy and driven by the anxieties of the Cold War. It was the CIA's illegal, unethical quest for mind control, a dark chapter in the agency's history. Fueled by Cold War paranoia, the fear of Soviet brainwashing techniques loomed large. In their desperate search for an edge, the agency dosed unwitting citizens with LSD, often without their knowledge or consent. They subjected them to hypnosis, seeking to unlock the secrets of the human mind. Sensory deprivation and psychological torture were also employed, pushing the boundaries of ethical and moral conduct. Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron's de-patterning experiments in Montreal became a focal point of the project. His methods aimed to erase and rebuild minds, not heal them, leaving lasting scars on his patients. The CIA even set up brothels, operating under the codename Operation Midnight Climax. These establishments were used to secretly dose people and observe the effects of LSD in a controlled environment. When the program was exposed, the public outcry was immense, leading to investigations and demands for accountability. In an attempt to cover their tracks, most records were destroyed, hindering a full understanding of the program's scope. This destruction of evidence left only a glimpse of the horrors inflicted upon unsuspecting individuals. Ironically, the agency's experiments inadvertently helped spark the 1960s counterculture. Figures like Ken Kesey and Allen Ginsberg became central figures in this cultural shift. Both were involved in CIA-funded drug trials, unknowingly contributing to the very movement the agency sought to suppress. They became icons of the psychedelic movement, advocating for expanded consciousness and challenging societal norms. The CIA failed at mind control, their primary objective slipping through their fingers. But they succeeded in fueling a cultural revolution that challenged authority and questioned the status quo. In trying to control minds, to mold individuals into compliant subjects, the agency accidentally inspired a generation to question everything, to think for themselves, and to resist manipulation. Sometimes, the most lasting impact of a secret program, of clandestine operations conducted in the shadows, is the chaos it unleashes, the unforeseen consequences that ripple through society for decades to come. The CIA coined the term blowback for the unintended consequences of covert operations. The prime example, Afghanistan in the 1980s. To bleed the Soviets, the CIA funneled billions in weapons and cash to the Mujahideen, recruiting radical Islamists from around the world. Among them, Osama bin Laden, who built al-Qaeda with US-supplied resources. After the Soviets withdrew, Afghanistan was left in chaos, awash with arms and warlords. The global jihad network the CIA helped create turned its sights on the West. The result: embassy bombings, the USS Cole, and 9/11s. The agency built a monster, then acted surprised when it turned on its creator. Blowback isn't just a theory, it's the legacy of short-term thinking in covert warfare. The world is still paying the price. The CIA has always been a tech innovator, think Q from James Bond, but with a bigger budget and less charm. From hidden cameras to the U-2 spy plane and satellite reconnaissance, the agency revolutionized surveillance. The real leap came with the digital age mass data collection replaced old-school spycraft. The CIA invested in Silicon Valley startups, ensuring early access to data mining and AI. After 9/11's, mass surveillance became the norm, as revealed by Edward Snowden. The agency shifted from targeting individuals to monitoring entire populations. Privacy became a relic. Now, everyone is a potential target. The shoe phone is history. The real surveillance device is in your pocket. The CIA helped build the digital panopticon we live in today. The CIA's most powerful weapon? Information and disinformation. Operation Mockingbird recruited journalists to plant stories and shape public opinion at home and abroad. Major media outlets became unwitting tools of U.S. propaganda. The agency secretly funded art, literature, and music to win the cultural Cold War. Abstract expressionism, literary magazines, even Hollywood films were used to promote American values. The CIA funded the animated Animal Farm, rewriting Orwell's message for anti-communist propaganda. Artists rarely knew their patron was the agency. The result, a world where culture and news were subtly engineered to serve U.S. interests. The line between reporting and propaganda was deliberately blurred. What's the CIA's legacy? A world shaped by shadowy power, instability, and mistrust. The agency's coups and interventions replaced democracies with dictators, fueling anti-American sentiment and long-term conflict. Programs like MK Ultra and Mockingbird shattered public trust, proving the state would lie, manipulate, and experiment on its own people. This erosion of trust is a cancer on democracy, fueling conspiracy theories and cynicism. The CIA normalized unaccountable power. Secret wars, surveillance, and manipulation became standard tools of statecraft. The deep state isn't a theory, it's a documented reality. The agency wrote the playbook for covert dominance, through politics, culture, and technology. The consequences are still unfolding, often in ways we barely understand. The CIA's story isn't good versus evil. It's a saga of unintended consequences and moral ambiguity. In fighting totalitarianism, the agency adopted many of its methods: secrecy, propaganda, and disregard for democracy. The result? A world order built on secrets, where U.S. interests trumped self-determination. The agency's influence rewired global politics and economics, propping up dictators and crushing popular movements. Its technological legacy blurred the line between foreign intelligence and domestic surveillance. The CIA created a new paradigm: power wielded through shadows, plausible deniability, and hidden hands. We now live in a world shaped by secrets, where the true story is often hidden, and the legacy is uncertainty itself.